Welcome to a new episode of Debut Diaries. This is a series that I do where I talk about all sorts of experiences of being a debut author in traditional publishing. You can check out the playlist with all of my other videos over here. And today I'm talking all about the process of changing my title. If you didn't know, if you follow me on social media, you would know, so you should also do that. But I have a title finally, my young adult fantasy with sci-fi elements debut coming out from Simon Pulse in 2021 in the summer is called Blood Like Magic. And that's my title, and I'm really excited about it. I'm really happy to have a title. I'm glad I don't have to keep code naming, and so that's really exciting. And so I wanted to talk all about what that process of changing my title was like. In traditional publishing, your cover and your title are two things that a lot of writers are aware going into the process that they're not going to have exclusive control over. But that being said, it really differs among publishers. Some publishers allow more input, some publishers maybe don't let you have as much. And so this experience varies pretty widely, I would say. So I can't say that my experience is like the mock-up of title changing experiences, but it is my experience and you can take from that what you will. From the beginning of this process, essentially from the moment that I sold my book, I was aware that I was going to be changing my title because for me personally, I started to think about it from more of a marketing perspective and less of a just me loving my title perspective. And I was aware that it wasn't going to get the job done necessarily. So my original title for my book was Voya Calling. Voya is my main character in my novel, and a calling is part of a witch's coming of age ceremony in the story. So that's why I named it that, which I liked, but the issue that I realized with it is that it didn't say anything about the book to anyone who hadn't already read the book. So if you read the book, you really liked the title because you were like, oh, I know who Voya is and I know what a calling is and I think that's a cool title. Awesome. But if you didn't know what the book was about, it didn't say anything about it being about magic or witches. It gave you no hints about the theme of the book. It just said zero about what the book was about. And so I knew it wasn't going to be a good title to begin with, which is why when we announced my book for the first time, we announced it as Untitled, even though I had a title at that point in time because we knew we were going to be changing it. And my editor's advice was to not go out with one title and then just have to change it anyway. If we already knew we were going to do that, better to just go out with Untitled and not have to switch people's perspectives. People do that commonly. That's not an uncommon thing, but I think in this case, because we already knew we were going to change it, there didn't seem to be any point in going out with one title just cause. So changing my title wasn't something that I was smacked over the head with. I wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe you don't like my title and you want to change it. What's happening? I wasn't clinging to it with shaking arms. I already knew we were going to change it and I was on board with that and I was great with that. And I had the same title all the way through the book. So Voya Calling I came up with right when I started writing the book, and it was that through the entire process up until that point where I decided I think I want to change this, and I told my agent, and my agent said, yeah, your editor would like to change it also, so we're going to change it. So that was the whole process leading up to the decision of we're going to change the title. What was the actual process of coming up with a new title? So there were two parts to this. So in one part, I came up with a bunch of different titles. And in the second part, my editor came up with a bunch of different titles. So this is kind of where differences between different publishers and different editors start to come up. I was really happy to present a list of titles that I had come up with, and that was something I was happy to do. I was doing that on the advice of my agent before my editor even was saying, okay, now we need to decide a title, and I was cool with that. For some people, some authors don't want to come up with their title at all, and they let their editor do all of that process for them. In some cases, maybe, I haven't heard of this, but in some case, maybe the writer is just left to come up with the title only with their editor just choosing which one they like. I don't know. But in my case, it was truly really collaborative in that I came up with a bunch of titles and my editor came up with a bunch of titles. So how did I decide on what titles I was coming up with? What I essentially did is I made a list of all the different sort of buzzwords and themes in my novel. So words like blood and magic and family and heritage and ancestors, occasionally Toronto, though I knew Toronto wasn't going to be in the title, but just to give me an idea. And then I looked at a list of fantasy books that already exist in their titles, and I started to make formulas. So formulas like the blank of blank and blank, or the blank of blank, or blank like blank, or blanks blank, or the house of blank. Essentially, I just made little formulas out of all these popular titling conventions in fantasy, and I would plug in all the different keywords I was thinking of until they fit into that. In some cases, I also did titles that were kind of riffs off of other titles. So my character does some cooking. She's really passionate about food and cooking, etc. So I took some cookbook titles and I tried to riff them with the different elements of my book, tried to kind of create funny riffs off of those. And that was some of the stuff I had done essentially. And that was kind of my research for doing titles. Later on, someone in my debut group also mentioned something I'm going to link below. It's like open source Shakespeare. So you can look up a keyword and it'll pull up different Shakespeare quotes with that keyword in it so that you can see if that kind of drums up some ideas for titles for you. And I really like that and I thought that was awesome. So I'm gonna link that below for you as well. And the next steps after that was that I sent my list of titles off to my editor. I think in the end I had like 40 something titles that I ended up sending to her. So I sent those lists of titles. She also came back with some of the titles she had thought of to get my feedback, which is part of that collaborative process. I don't know if everyone does that with their editor, but that's how it was for me, in that she showed me some titles she had come up with and had also asked if there were any sort of things in titles that I didn't want to do so that she would know what to kind of avoid. So for me, for example, even though I know it's like a black witches book, I didn't want to use the phrase black magic at all, just because I find in fantasy there's this history of black magic being bad and white magic being good, which is whatever, but then the black magic is also often associated with darker skinned characters and they're seen as evil, and then the white magic is associated with light skinned characters and they're really good, and I didn't like the racial optics of that. That's something I actually actively try and get away from in my book. I use sort of like magical terms that can't be linked to race in that way. I just find that in fantasy that I watched growing up, that was something that happened all the time, and it just creates these associations in your mind that maybe you don't even think of, and so that wasn't something that I wanted to associate with the book. I also wanted to avoid like blood magic together if I could, as like one title, just like blood magic, because that's also kind of its own thing, and like in some cases has like real life connections, and that was kind of something I wanted to like steer away from directly shoving together. So those were the two things that I wanted to steer clear of, and my editor was very much like, cool, understand all of that, we'll avoid that when coming up with titles. And so this is the thing where I think in traditional publishing, people talk about, oh, you don't have control of your title, and people think they're going to be forced to use whatever title no matter what they think of it. And that was very much the opposite of my experience. There were a couple titles my editor sent to me that she was like, do you like those? And I was like, I actually hate that. I was so sorry. And she was like, Kate, that's fine. We won't do that if you hate it. Let's move on to other title options. And that's really natural, and it was really collaborative, and my editor was always really open to all of my opinions, and so that was really good for me. And if there was a title I really liked and in marketing they felt it wouldn't work, she always explained to me why they got those opinions back from marketing and from maybe this won't work for the book, so that I understood. She never just said flat out no to me. So for example, things that they wanted to do, like she let me know we're trying to put magic or witch or spell or something like that in the title so people know this is a book about witches. And I was like, that's legitimate. Cool. I'll strike all my titles that don't have any of that and I'll brainstorm more titles that do. So to me, it was a very collaborative, very open experience. And in the end, the title we came up with, and I say we, this is like royal we, in that my editor came up with this title, the title Blood Like Magic. And that is the title we ended up going with, which was really exciting for me. And like, now I have a title. Something that I also really appreciated was that my editor really shared with me all the background and all the thinking behind why she had proposed this title so that I could understand exactly what the background of the title was and if it fit with the book for me, which it did. So that was a really good part of the process. Honestly, the process was really positive. I spent a lot of time being very impatient. But once we were actually focusing and doing the title, all of that back and forth felt very collaborative, and that was really good. And I was really happy with the whole process. So Blood Like Magic, what is up with that? So this is really good because for me and for my editor, it brings up a lot of different themes in the book. For example, really family. So your blood, as in your blood relatives, your heritage, and also the history of blood. In my book, I talk a lot about my main character's ancestors, ancestors who sometimes did not have great existences, who were slaves, who suffered and, you know, put their blood into protecting their blood, and all of that history coming together is your blood and how important that is in the book. And that's really the big part of the blood. And then also in my story, blood and magic are 100% connected. They are linked inextricably to each other. They cannot be separated, which is also a really important aspect of the story. Their blood is really like magic. It truly is, along with those bonds being their own sort of special magic. And that's what I really like about the title. And so it's also like catchy as hell, so that's great. But yeah, huge shout out to my editor, Sarah McCabe, for coming up with that and for really like putting so much thought into it and really understanding the book and its themes and what it's about and getting that together in a title. I've had a wonderful experience with Sarah, and I'm so happy to have a title, and there are some cover whispers, so we'll see if we got something about that. I haven't seen anything, so don't get too excited. There's just whispers. So we'll see about how that all turns out. But this was one of the parts of the process that was really important to me because having a title feels so much more real. It just feels concrete in that I have a book coming out next year in the summer, and it's Blood Like Magic, and everybody can call it that because that's the title, and we know that, and that's really exciting for me. That's it for this episode of Debut Diaries. If you want to watch any more of these videos, I'll have the playlist linked over here and below so you can check the other videos out. And of course, if you want to add my book Blood Like Magic to Goodreads, please feel free to. It's in the description below, along with more information about the book. And thank you so much for watching this. If you have any questions about titles and the title process, I'll answer to the best of my ability. And also, if there's any future videos you want to see in this series any other debut writer experiences that you're interested in, you can also comment with those below and I can look into that. And please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. I post once a week, every Tuesday, sometimes more. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!